Well, I'd like to start by saying that, in fact, today's budget is one of the more interesting budgets there has been in several years. It gives you lots to think about and lots to worry about. Much of it may be big ideas with no real path to implementation, but at least it's got big ideas and a distinct focus, and we'll come to each one of those big ideas and the focus during the course of the show. The previous budgets of this government have been, to quote Mr. Chidambaram, a little bit forgettable. But what Mr. Chidambaram forgot to add was that his budgets too were rather forgettable. This one is different. It pushes the envelope. It certainly enthused me, and it has worried me as well at the same time. So today in this show, we try to answer all the questions that you have about the budget and you are terrified to ask for various reasons. If you want to learn from some of the country's top experts, and we really have chosen a select group, stay tuned to this show. We will also be revealing a huge new finding in this budget that nobody has talked about so far. And one of the experts is sitting right here who revealed it. Wait for that. It'll come with a line, if you can't beat it, REIT it. Figure that out. It's big though, I promise. But let's have a look first at the 9 big promises, 9 big ideas in this budget, and they were quite impressive.
Yeah, Prannoy, so this is where the finance minister really started off from, and he said that there are 9 big ideas, and those are the 9 pillars of his budget speech. All of them were interesting. The ideas themselves were great. There were some people who may have a question mark as to the specific steps that he actually outlined in them. But let's just take you through what those 9 major points were. So here are the 9 pillars of Jaitley's budget. First of all, he spoke about agriculture and what you can do for agriculture and for farmer welfare. He's aimed really to double farmers' income in 5 years, and that is something that is a big message. I assume that's nominal, but it's a big step anyway. Number 2, he went on to then speak about specifically the rural sector, rural infrastructure, rural development. And again, he had some points which were listed out there in the steps that he specifically wanted to take in the rural infrastructure.
Like
and
rural
other
roads,
sectors.
doubling
rural roads,
expenditure.
doubling them, a lot of other things that he put into that.
I do want to go back to that first point. Doubling rural incomes in 5 years or even 6 years, because it sometimes says 5 years, sometimes says by 2022, which is like 6, is a ridiculous concept. Ridiculous.
Nominal though, Prannoy, so I guess it also
even
depends on the
nominal,
inflation
so you've got to
rate.
have hyperinflation if you're going to get there, and that is. But when you talk about doubling your income, you talk about real income. I mean, you don't say, I'm going to double your income and double prices as well. That's no point.
Yeah.
So that big idea worries you about some of the other ideas. Sorry,
yeah, that's true. So agriculture, farmers, and there was rural development. Let me go to point number 3, because that is where he actually had specific steps that were outlined, and this is the entire social sector and what he wants to do in social spending. He talked about things like healthcare and other things. This is where that LPG plan came up,
which is
a
a lovely idea.
Lovely idea that you don't have people cooking anymore on wood-fired, wood
the multiplier effects of various,
like LPG.
Wonderful.
So that was number 3. Number 4, and if you can just go on to that as we keep rattling along, was an entire question of education. Enough, Prannoy, you think out here in education? He spoke about big universities and others coming up, but again, not too many steps here.
Yeah, again, ideas with a no real, I don't feel confident about the path to implementation on them. They're lovely ideas, at least we're thinking in those directions, which is a big, refreshing move. But really would like to see proper monitoring of all these ideas. If these are implemented, it's a path-breaking budget. If they're not implemented, like most of our other things in life, it's just another budget.
Right, so this is the 4th one, which is in this, what he called the Transform India scheme. And then the next one, infrastructure and investment. And this is one of the places where there were lots of specific suggestions and solutions that were put out there, including massive investments in road, massive investment in power, investment in railways as well. So Prannoy, here he did put a certain amount of bang behind the buck. Number 6 then were financial sector reforms, which are what he wants to do is bring about transparency and stability. Number 7 was governance, the ease of doing business. That was the other pillar that came up. And then there was fiscal discipline. And Prannoy, the target was maintained out here at 3.5, which many people thought maybe he's going to slip out there, but he didn't. He kept it to 3.5, and that was
because there's a lot of pressure on him from especially industry, which is almost in a recession, really in bad shape, saying This time, forget about that 3.5% discipline. Let's boost demand, boost private investment by incentives from the government. But he didn't fall for that because industry is always complaining, always. But this time, actually, this time they have, I think, valid reasons to complain. Industry is in bad shape.
And also, Prannoy, I think if at a time when you've had a big bonus from oil prices being low, if you had said, oh, I'm going to fail on my fiscal target this year, people would have asked the question, the why. If you can't do it this year, which year are you going to actually do it? And the final point, of course, was tax reforms. That was his 9th pillar, and he spent the entire part B of his speech actually talking about it. But those, Prannoy, were the 9 major pillars that he spoke about.
Yeah, and I think, you know, if you go into each one of them, there are major ideas in each. And it's very refreshing to see a budget which started like this in Part A, which broke away from the norm and just that pedantic running through various, you know, motherhood and apple pie. These are challenges for the Indian economy. And if we can do them, it will be a breakthrough. I think let's just move on to one of the biggest problems in India today. And it's slightly technical, so bear with us, but this is the beat, if you can't beat it, REIT it concept. The problem, one of the biggest problems we are facing are stressed balance sheets of our banks and many of our big companies. You know, stressed balance sheets, what do we mean? They've taken on huge amounts of debt and they are unable to service that debt. They're not earning enough to pay back the banks. So the companies like infrastructure companies, real estate companies have built houses, built apartments, they haven't been able to sell them. They've taken loans and they aren't able to service those loans. So what the economic survey called twin balance sheets. The companies have bad balance sheets, they can't service the loans, and as a result the banks which gave the loans are not getting the income to get their loans back. So that is a key problem. So what has this budget done to save the banks? At first sight, not very much, but our expert here pointed to a whole new area and we'll come to that. So look at that, saving the banks. India's biggest problem, bad debts or non-performing assets in a technical term. So in the budget, what the government has set aside is 25,000 crores, and all of us looked at that and said, 25,000 crores, that's a drop in the ocean. What we didn't notice, and I think was not given enough emphasis in the budget speech, was a new REIT scheme, that is real estate investment trust scheme. This is where banks and infrastructure companies can put their assets, which are like land or buildings that they own and in their books at book value, which they may have bought 30, 40 years ago. So a huge block of flats may be just worth 25 crores in their books, but in the market it could be worth 2,000 crores. So this, by putting them into a trust and raising funds from the market, from people like you and me into that trust, they can take their asset value from the book value of 25 crores to 2,000 crores and get money in. So assets get revalued upwards. Banks' balance sheets look much better. Now I'm oversimplifying and we'll go into how this can make all the difference. If this works, and has not been really highlighted so far, the REIT and the InvIT. Let's just go on to the second aspect. The REIT is the Real Estate Investment Trust, and its brother is the Infrastructure Investment Trust. So if you're an infrastructure company and you've built something big, you can now value that hugely by putting into a trust. You can still own quite a lot of it. People can invest and get a steady income from it. So what it does, it provides liquidity for banks if they're going to put it into a REIT, their assets into a REIT, and also liquidity because an infrastructure company that wasn't paying the banks can now get income and pay back its loan to the banks. So improves balance sheets by getting market value of assets. Now the person who spotted this, Vivek, just explain that a little more detail, because I talk low-level stuff, you know, like for people like Dorab.
Okay, so let's say, see, the government, even the previous government was very keen to have a good REIT and InvIT. This provided an alternate investment field for certain types of investors who wanted stable returns with stable assets. low risk and hence low return. But this is not a debt instrument, it's an equity instrument which has a yield. I think they went almost all 9 yards in the previous budgets of the UPA government and the NDA government. The one thing that was left out was a full, true pass-through. Most of Indian assets, whether it is real estate, and in real estate it's not really residential, it's all commercial spaces which get you a rent of 8, 10, 12% of the value of the assets. They could be roads, they could be power projects, they could be windmills, they could be ports, all sorts of infrastructure. So these are
which are being valued in your books at a very nominal value because of historical reasons and because of various conventions, but actually valued much more, and you couldn't upvalue them. You're not
so
allowed
I'll just
to.
come to the banks part of it, where we thought it could be used very usefully. Is that so the SPVs in which these assets are parked because of regulatory reasons, historical reasons and stamp duty reasons to shift them were not being allowed as a pass-through. So now the finance minister has allowed the surplus funds in the SPVs holding these assets to be upstreamed after paying corporate tax without dividend distribution tax, and that income would go directly to the investors. So this, I think, is very positive. And why will it possibly help banks, apart from the stressed assets of infras, etc., repaying their loans and helping NPA? Why can't banks who are sitting on huge real estate exit these at fair market values to real estate investment trusts and continue to use those assets by paying rent and hence book a huge profit? As you said, rightly said, the book values are nothing. Banks are quoting at less than book. This surplus that they will receive will be part of their reserves,
way, this could be,
which will be capitalized.
This could be more significant than the 25,000 crore that they're using. Dorab, you understand this all.
Very large.
All your assets you can put into a
the
REIT.
advantage is that once you created the REIT, you get, so you sold the asset. It's on your books. You've been paid for the asset. Now you can lend that money. You're paying 9% interest for, supposing I have a building, I sell the building to you, I give you 9% interest, and when I get the money, I give it to Naushad at 12%. So I'm making, the bank am making money.
He's a Parsi like you. You ain't going to get money out of him, man. No way you're going to make money out of him.
Prannoy, perhaps you should just welcome now the guests.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So Prannoy, perhaps you should just welcome our other guests who are here with us. We have Naushad, of course, President Designated CII, Shekhar's with us. Sachin Pilot is with us as well. Mr. Anand Sharma has just joined us. Chandan Mitra is with us. Rajya Sabha MP from the BJP. Praful Patel is with us as well. And we do have with us Yashwant Sinha, former finance minister who's been in exactly this position in the past. So, Mr. Sinha, perhaps you should start off with you. Prannoy was speaking about this, some of the really interesting details that we are now seeing in the budget itself. But your take as an overall whole on the direction that we've just been seeing, those 9 pillars, and then also the specific steps that the finance minister took.
Well, obviously, number 9 is a very auspicious number for the finance minister. So he's picked up not 4, but 9 pillars for the superstructure that he wants to construct. But as Prannoy was saying, all of them are very interesting ideas. And on the whole, I would say that this budget has a very clear direction. It has put in place the various steps which are needed to implement the programs and policies that he has in mind. And it is a very good budget from the point of view of the growth in the economy. All in all, I think we should fare much better in the coming fiscal than has been the case in many years in the past.
So important point you're making there, that you're saying it's very good for growth. It's basically focused on agriculture and rural areas, but has it done enough for growth in the area which is languishing the most private investment, industrial growth? We've seen the index of industrial production at negative levels. We've seen the wholesale price index down in negative, which means it's an indication of lack of demand. So has it done enough for growth?
Well, let me tell you, Prannoy, that during the Vajpayee regime, we had followed a certain economic model for increasing growth in the economy. And what was that model? That model was basically to create demand for investment goods in the economy, and then marshal all your forces in order to meet that demand. Now, how did we increase the demand for investment goods? By emphasizing on infrastructure, basically roads of all kinds, rural roads, national highways, state roads. Then railways, because railways is a huge organization with great potential, and housing. Now, I had earmarked these three sectors for a special attention even before the budget, and I said if these three sectors are properly attended to, then they will release those growth impulses in the economy. Now, the finance minister has indeed concentrated on these three sectors, and he is going to spend massive amounts of money on roads, on railways, and on housing. He has given income tax concessions, which should be very useful, and all these have a multiplier effect in the economy, and they will then create, what will they do? One, they will lead to the creation of more employment opportunities. Two, they will help the stressed sectors of the economy like cement, steel, building material, power. Three, they will have an impact on the NPAs of banks also, because this will mean releasing the projects which are held up. This will mean creation of new projects, and all this is going to help the banks largely get over the problem of NPAs. So it is a win-win from all points of view, and I am very happy that the finance minister has paid attention to these three areas.
Mr. Sinha, I know you have to leave us, so just one last question to you, sir. On one of the other big themes that the finance minister tried to touch upon, governance, ease of doing business, he said it was to enable people to realize their full potential, tax reforms, to have faith in the citizenry. Again, it's a good idea and it's a big idea, but do you think the actual steps that were announced were enough for simplification and ease of business?
I think a lot of steps have been taken, but we must look at it as a work in progress at all times. I mean, you can never say that as far as administrative reforms are concerned or ease of doing business is concerned, we have reached a full stop and no further action need be taken. But I think a very important beginning has been made in this budget, and for the startups and all that, concessions have been given. So these are all areas which will generate growth in the economy and will also create employment at the same time.
Right, it's a big statement coming from you, because you've been there, done that, you've produced many budgets yourself, and to be so positive about it is a major statement. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Sinha. We've done many budget programs together earlier. It's good to see you still analyzing as analytical as ever.
Thank you.
So, Naushad, industry which you represent has been languishing. You've had now time to digest this budget. You've had 6-7 hours. Disappointment? Are you happy? Not happy? Halfway.
So I think the key issue is indeed for industry is indeed demand, and if you look at what are the drivers that the government has at its disposal to drive demand,
right.
They're relatively limited.
Right.
The two drivers that they've chosen to use in this budget are, I think, quite powerful. First, rural demand, trying to transfer income to rural areas and income into the hands of farmers as a way of reviving the rural economy and therefore providing a trigger for rural demand. And second, infrastructure spending, which is a very direct way in which the government can invest in the economy and trigger demand. And I think both of these will start flowing through into industrial demand, and together with the industrial demand, then that will hopefully start triggering investment demand as well.
Right. Actually, if I can just show you the stock market, if we got a graph on the stock market, that's not all happy, But if you could explain why some sectors are, I mean, it's a bit tough question to ask you, but look what's, this Nifty overall was down 0.61%. That's a percent there. Now, the ones that went down were infrastructure, where everybody wanted things to happen. Maybe they haven't heard Vivek Mehra yet and they don't know about REIT and InvIT. IT down 1.8%. That's a disappointment. MNCs 1.9% down. And the ones that have gone up are bank and finance. That's not really make in India. In fact, on the left side is more kind of make in India. Real estate, neither happy nor very sad, but at least not down. And FMCG about the same. Why would these different sectors react in these ways? Any idea?
So let me qualify what I'm about to say with the comment that I always recommend to my friends that if they want to make money on the stock market, they should closely track what I do and do the opposite.
Right. Same here.
So in terms of why this, I think it's based on whether or not expectations were met in the budget. So in a sense, I think there were expectations that there would be a lot of focus on infrastructure. And given that there were some of those expectations were met, maybe not all, maybe that's why it shows down. I think the bank and finance being up is probably because there was low expectations, and then there's probably more of deliverance in the budget than people expected. So I think it's probably how expectations and actual understanding of the budget. So I think it's all.
And people were fearing terrible things in this budget, and they're kind of relieved that they didn't happen.
Yes, I think so. I think that's the only comment I'd make.
Of course, there were some things that Prannoy perhaps hadn't been factored in completely at the time the markets closed, like PF and those things only came out later. Right. So there are lots in the fine print. Praful Patel and Chandan Mitra are with us as well. Before I come to Mr. Anand Sharma, also who's here. Praful, your any points in the budget that you want to draw attention to?
Well, first thing is the maximum emphasis was on agriculture and the rural economy. And I'm a little surprised, and not little, I'm saying very surprised, that you expect farm incomes to double in 5 years. It's something which is unimaginable, and I don't think in any way this budget can match those expectations. You are literally looking at farm incomes. If you see the average realization a farmer was getting 2 years ago and vis-a-vis today, he's actually getting less in terms of money, the remuneration from the sale of his produce.
I think they meant 15 years.
In this context,
more likely actually. 15 years would be bloody good actually.
Yeah.
15 years is 5% a year, which in real terms would be a tremendous rate. Sorry, carry on.
No, but that's what I'm saying. How do you double it in 5 years?
That's not happening.
It's something unimaginable. I mean, if you really look at the agriculture spend, I've got the budget papers right in front of me, and under the head of irrigation and agriculture, which are the two things which he spoke the most. Irrigation, only 2,340 crores on micro irrigation, that is the drop by drop scheme. Then 1,500 for integrated watershed development and 2,000 for accelerated irrigation benefit program. So where is that money? And in 17,000 crores, what he said, I don't see it here. And number two, in 17,000 crores in 1 year, how are you going to irrigate 28.5 lakh hectares of land? I mean, which maths are we talking about? I mean, we've seen my constituency is 100% rural. Largest projects of Maharashtra are in my constituency, and I have not seen that kind of money being translated into that kind of irrigation potential.
I think
so
that's
anyway, I think there's something.
Actually, that's
a wrong math which I see.
Yeah, I think the crux of it is in what you've just said.
The second,
focusing on irrigation is a wonderful thing. Sorry, but
I'm talking of irrigation.
No, I'm just elaborating on what you're saying. Focusing on irrigation is a great thing, but how do you get it done is not clear. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that you must spend on irrigation, but where is it going to translate into the numbers we are talking about? Where's the money and how is that program? And mind you, irrigation is a state subject. Most projects are implemented by the states, nothing by the center. and what level are they, or what is the capacity of the state to absorb this money, to spend it, to what are the problems, the bottlenecks. These in irrigation projects have n number of problems, right from land acquisition to environment to so many other issues which cannot be, you know, described in just a moment, you know, on television. Yeah. Then on agriculture, it's 5,500 for the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, 5,400 for Rashtriya Krishi Vikas Yojana, and 6,900 for the Krishi Unnati Yojana. That's about all that's in agriculture. So if
no, that's not quite true.
Combination of this spend.
No, Mr. Patel, I have to intervene there. Farmer welfare has gone up to 44,000 crores from 23,000 crores. That's almost double. Rural roads have gone up to 19,000 crores from just 9,000. That's more than double. Lower interest rates for farmers, interest subvention, lower interest rates at 15,000 crores. So the numbers you mentioned were not the only numbers.
But listen to me. Farmers' interest intervention is nothing new. It's been going on since the last 8-9 years. Right, it's been provided in budget after budget. Under which head you've been reading?
That may
See,
be, but
we are talking about additional spend.
Let me get Chandan Mitra. Chandan, one of the first lines of the budget actually was a line about doubling farmers' incomes. Is that in 5 years? Is that a realistic possibility?
I am not saying what is being provided is wrong. The question is the amount which has been provided going to translate into doubling of farmers' incomes in 5 years?
Okay, let's throw
or
that.
Doing enough? Interest intervention is not a new scheme, and are we trying to talk that all these years nothing has been spent ever on agriculture, and this is the first time you're seeing these kind of monies?
Okay.
These are all ongoing programs.
Let me throw that question to Chandan now.
Year on year on year.
Let's throw that question to Chandan now. Chandan, doubling farmers' incomes in 5 years, it's a very major thing to say. Is it at all feasible, doable?
Of course it's feasible, because we are talking about real incomes, and at a time when farmers' real incomes are actually falling. Now the point is to arrest this fall, and then if the finance minister is pledging doubling of the real income of farmers in 5 years, I think it's a big promise, but it's a promise that I think the government is determined to realize. To take one thing, I'm not going to get into a quibble with Praful Patel ji, because he has been a minister, he knows his facts, but I too have my knowledge about the facts of the situation of the budget, and look at the 100% FDI that is now going to be allowed in agriculture, that will come in food processing, and the huge opportunities that it will open up for farmers, and the amount of wastage that it will stop, and the fact that farmers will be encouraged to going in for food processing in a big way. Now this alone can really become a driver of economic growth, and along with the kind of new schemes, including the farm insurance scheme, will ensure that the farmer can take risks and increase the income.
Chandan, nowhere in the world,
rural infrastructure,
Chandan, nowhere in the world has income grown.
Vision has been laid out.
Chandan, nowhere in the world has income grown by 15% real. If it's a real, actually nominal will be higher, which is 20% per annum.
That's the question.
It's not possible, just not possible. Why don't you say it's a mistake and let's get on with it?
We are talking about the demand growth. We are talking about the growth of demand in the economy,
15%.
And if demand grows, incomes will obviously grow. They are connected. Now, nowhere in the world, what do you mean by nowhere in the world incomes have grown? Nowhere in the world incomes have grown.
Praful Patel, I just want to come back to you on another issue completely. You transformed India's landscape by transforming our airports. I mean, before you were minister, there were the old airports. Now we are proud of our airports. It's a huge transformation. I remember seeing the plans and them actually put into practice. Can the same thing, and I want to go back a little bit to the railway budget, can the same thing that you did with airports be done with railway stations, where the property is even more prime than airports, and that you do an e-auction and you get allow people to build hotels, restaurants of different types, high income, low income, and really make ours world-class railway stations? Is that possible?
Well, It's absolutely doable, and I can tell you, I've had a discussion with Suresh Prabhu on this. I'm completely being apolitical about it. He's been asking me for the ideas, and I've been also talking to him and supporting him in his endeavor and his enthusiasm. The only real issue here is, you know, instead of endeavoring to change all 400, let him start with 10, 20, and let's make a template on which he can build the next 400.
And
The
these
second
can be
thing,
done.
more importantly,
These can be done through e-auction. The government doesn't have to spend any money, right? That will be paid by the investors who get.
No, absolutely. You have to go for PPP. You have to find the money so that fuels the growth rather than you spending it from your pocket. Now, just one little observation, since you mentioned the railways. The railways this year, as Finance Minister said today, is going to spend 1,25,000 crores on infrastructure. Can you imagine a railways, the ability of them to absorb 1,25,000 crores spent in 1 year? I think it's simply going to remain on paper. I wish them well. I think their enthusiasm is great. But even if they find the money, where are they going to spend the money? I mean, you know, it's nice to say, see the road program of 1 lakh crores is still doable.
Now, if you want
because
to spend,
there's lots of
Mr.
work in
Patel says you
progress
can't
already.
spend. If you don't allocate the money, you say you haven't allocated the money. What is this?
No. I'm talking of
You
railways.
can't argue both
I'm
ways,
talking of railways.
Praful. If you want to spend the money, then you say you can't spend the money.
No.
On the other hand, you say...
Chandran Mitra is making a valid point. It's not easy to spend so much in 1 year. This is not a...
We don't have the pipeline for that.
I am not trying to say, I also understand how government, we can spend 1,25,000 crores in the railways on capital infrastructure. I think it's a near impossible task.
You can, yes.
I can understand that the road program can still absorb a lot of it because most of the projects are work in progress and therefore they're already now on moving and running. But what do you talk about the railways? While the intentions are good, how are you going to spend 8,50,000 crores in 5 years? It's something which, I think the maths don't add up. I mean, it's simply something which I wish them well,
Mr. Patel.
and it's good for the country, it's good for the railways, but it's not going to happen.
All right, Mr. Patel, thanks a lot for joining us. I know you have to leave us now. Anand Sharma, let me get you in on a couple of those points that were just raised. Very great if it can actually happen. Lots of spending has been earmarked for roads, for railways, possibly, and of course that very ambitious target of doubling agricultural income within 5 years. Wonderful for the country if it actually happens. The question is, how likely is it to happen?
Very difficult to happen. This budget, more deeply you look into it, the numbers don't match up at all. Numbers don't match up.
Numbers don't match up.
Secondly, it's full of platitudes and cliches. It does not inspire growth. Anybody saying it's pro-growth, it's going to boost investments and actually accelerate manufacturing, I'll disagree with. Though we would like manufacturing to go up, but manufacturing as of today is at a 7-year low. Money is not available, capital flows are very weak, and given the state of the global economy, we don't expect more money to come in. If we think that it's only the FDI, even last year's numbers, irrespective of the tall claims, you are looking at FDI numbers being masked because FPI and FII is being clubbed as FDI. And I always, when I was a minister responsible for the FDI policy, I disagreed with this and I said this cannot be masked because if you look at the outflow in the first 41 days of this year, up to 11th of February, it is more than 1 lakh crore. 1,11,000 crore have already gone out.
So that's mainly FII, right? Not FDI.
Yes. No, but this government has changed the definition of FDI by including FPI and FII, which have reservations. Second thing about the domestic investment, the gross capital formation, the latest numbers are minus 19.7%. Now, it's a huge fall. Thirdly, the industry will look at the demand, as was being said, and rightly so by Naushad. And when you're looking at demand, yes, investment in infrastructure and investment in agriculture or on rural infrastructure will hopefully boost the demand. But it is, to my mind, just a course correction. Industry will first look at how to utilize the existing capacity because there's, depending on the sector to sector, at least 30% of the existing capacity is not being utilized. So first they will go in for the utilization of the existing capacity before they add capacity in the way of investments. Then where's the money? Look at the banks. If you say recapitalization of banks, 25,000 crore is adequate. No, last two budgets, 20,000 crores have been cut. Previous two budgets, 17,000 crore every year was being given for recapitalization. Then followed by 7,000, 7,000.
So you came in a bit late. You missed the line. If you can't beat it, REIT it. And I'll talk to you later.
Yeah,
No, sorry. But if I may just add one thing.
We'll just come back.
If I may just add one thing, which is very, very important, looking at the budget part, that I would like to discuss with you some of the revenue numbers.
Right.
And
We'll just come back. Let's
also,
focus on this.
have we discussed about savings?
Right.
Savings have not been encouraged at all.
All right.
We're coming to that actually.
All right, sir. Well, Rishad, do you want to just come in on some of the other aspects about the revival of the climate? Harshad and Nyotia is also joining us, so maybe we can get both of you from an industry point of view to just talk about the basic issues about being able to actually invest and spend, because a large section of India Inc. finds itself unable to spend or to invest, or lacking the confidence to go out and invest. Is that likely to change after this?
So I think it will happen with demand. As demand picks up, that's what will trigger investment. And I think to expect investment to happen without that pickup in demand that's not going to happen. So I think the measures that we spoke about earlier will help demand, and I think that will flow through into investment. The one area where I think the budget can help is in driving some changes in sentiment. And I think there are a couple of these big ideas that if they start happening on the ground, I think they can potentially be a big changer in terms of changing sentiment. So for example, the direct benefits transfer being applied to fertilizer subsidy as in a pilot project. I think that's a fundamentally new area to look at. It's potentially huge. The fertilizer subsidy is one of the largest subsidies in the budget today. If we can actually start addressing that,
and a huge proportion of it, I think about 25% goes to rich farmers. And
yes. Yeah.
And an equal proportion goes to all the small farmers.
Exactly. And it's it's not
targeted.
It goes to, that's right. It goes as maybe more to firms than it does to farmers. It goes. It's not targeted in any way, shape, or
form. Disappears.
Yeah.
So actually disappears.
So there's huge potential in that fertilizer subsidy point, I think. And then the second one is the central government schemes, where there's this. It was almost a throwaway comment where it said, look, all new central government schemes will have a sunset clause and will have clearly specified outcomes. We have to see how that actually gets deployed. But again, if it happens as it should, it's fundamentally very new for the country.
All right, Mr. Nyotia, let me view from CII. Let me get your view as well from Vicky. Changing the demand, the way demand is right now, and encouraging and boosting demand, especially rural demand, is that the real solution from your point of view, or would you also have liked to have seen more direct spending or infrastructure spending? There was a fair amount there, but more direct role played by the government.
No, I think if you're looking at the context in which the Indian economy is placed, looking at the world economy, looking at the challenges that are there in the country, I think the investment in infrastructure is quite sizable. I think to also put that kind of money into the ground, the kind of processes and procedures that one has to follow, I think that's a significant amount if that can actually get invested on the ground. So I don't see too much more that could have been done there. But what I do feel is that, yes, the demand will take a little while to come in. And I do think also that India is one of the relatively better places in the world to invest. So international investors or Indian investors would be eager and looking forward to invest once their capacities are utilized. And therefore the boosting of rural demand, which some efforts have been made to see that we have more balanced growth. We don't have that kind of distress that leads to social tensions. We must remember that industry cannot function in isolation to the environment in which we are, and if there is a lot of unrest, that also impacts industry adversely. So the fact that we need to address that, to address the agrarian crisis, is very, very important, and it's just as well that there is a very large focus given to that in this budget.
Chandan Mitra, can I just bring you in here? One of the things that industry would have loved to have seen is cheaper costs on his profit and loss account, lower costs. And interest rates is a big burden on most industry now. We've got a great RBI governor, proud of him. Everybody admires and respects him, not only in India but around the world, and a great chief economic advisor. Has this budget, by sticking to 3.5% budget deficit, has that signaled to the RBI governor, now it's your turn, lower interest rates? And there's some thought that he could even lower them tomorrow because there's a strong signal there. Do you think he should, and will you be disappointed if he doesn't?
Well, I will be disappointed if he does not lower interest rates in the coming weeks. I think the time has come. It has been there. The time has been there for quite some time now, and the interest rates should have been lowered to spur further lending to priority sectors, industry and every other area. Now, yes, the position of banks is not very happy and there are NPAs are very high. Banks may have to be more prudent, but the lending process must be kind of invigorated, and for that it is necessary that the cost of money in India is brought down to comparable levels with other kind of emerging markets. And here I think if we have to play a competitive game, the interest rates must be lowered. And with today's kind of prudential kind of budget that has been presented, budget deficit kept in check, I think the signal is loud and clear to the RBI governor that he should go ahead and lower interest rates to spur industry.
Right. All right, the lowering of interest rates, perhaps the next big thing to look at. Sachin, just wanted to get you in on the essential thrust on some of the steps that were announced for agriculture, for rural.
Sachin, you're meant to intervene, shout and wave your arms and, you know. Oh, sorry, this is NDTV. Sorry, you don't do that. Carry on, Vikram.
Don't instigate. Why don't you wanted him to shout at me or shout at who? Okay, just
well, I'll tell you something.
But on the social sector in particular, some of the steps that were announced on, LPG, for example, you've experienced so many, women cooking on those wood fires at damage to their own health and at damage to the environment. Are those great steps, good steps?
Well, how I look at it is this fact that the government only has 2 more budgets left before they can deliver Achhe Din. This budget is an absolutely out and out political budget, and everything else is peripheral. Whatever we talked about just now is all happens to be there because I think there's a big imprint of the electoral losses the government has suffered and the belated realization that if we don't actually start looking like we care for the poor of this country, we'll get booted out before our time is over. It's the clear message from the speech you can get. The Prime Minister on that radio program said that it is my examination, so it's his imprint on it. He also wants to take the credit of being pro-poor. I think in the last 2 years, this government has realized that no matter what happens, the 10 years of UPA, the average growth was more than 8%. In the last 2 years, they've not clocked 7.5% plus. The finance minister mentioned the global doom and gloom and headwinds, so on and so forth. He didn't mention the low oil prices, the low energy and the commodity prices and how much benefit we're getting. $80 billion India has saved, which in fact is earned. And has that been passed on to the consumers? No. And then you have this 5-year timeline of doubling the farm income. Why that happened, Dorab, is because the election in 2019. If the election was in 2020, they would have said, something else. It's all election cycles, and the Bihar loss, I think, is certainly visible in this finance minister's speech.
They can't keep that going. I mean, the UP is still a year away. And there's other stuff that they could have done to make it more overtly populist.
Everyone has said this is a course correction. Now, correction is required when the course was wrong.
So
we've been shouting from rooftops that you have to care about the farmers, the income, the distress cycle is so large and vicious, it's consuming people. So it's about time the government woke up to it. But like Praful Patel said earlier, there is no match in the allocation and the delivery.
Sachin Pilot is actually talking about kind of course correction. That this government has really been talking about Achhe Din for the middle classes and for everybody, but now it's much more focused on the rural, on the poor. Is that a course correction, you see?
I would call it course correction if the government had done very much for the middle classes and for industry, etc. over the past couple of years. They did not. They just talked. Now they have changed the talk. I don't think substantively there isn't much difference. I think there is a sense of being rattled. But at the same time, I would say it's also in keeping with Mr. Modi's personality and his approach to economics. I've been saying for some time that he's not a liberalizer of the economy. He believes in the big government, but he thinks he can make governance better. So he's a reformer of government processes. He's not a liberalizer. He will not let go. And you see that all over this budget as well. Now, Vikram, before you ask me something, let me just...
No, I was about to just... Yeah, okay.
No, just pick up the thread from where Praful Patel left. You know, Praful is a friend of mine and that of everybody else. I would really request him not to use the Maharashtra example to show productivity of investments in irrigation. Maharashtra is absolutely the worst example in the whole world. Forget Delhi, and I think whatever any government does, I think efficiency from investments in irrigation will be better than it's been in Maharashtra.
Right. Shekhar, I have to interrupt this because I would like to go across to Jayant Sinha, who's now joining us, Minister of State for Finance. So thanks a lot, Jayant, for joining us on a big day. We do want to understand some of the philosophy behind the budget, those 9 pillars that we saw, and also some other aspects of it. There were definitely certain Robin Hood provisions in there as well, you know, trying to take some money away from the super rich and redistribute it. But first, your overall thought on the philosophy and whether there was enough actual meat behind those each of those 9 pillars that were outlined.
Good evening, Vikram. Good evening, Prannoy. Good evening, Shekhar.
Good evening. Good evening.
I think that, you know, it's very interesting for you all to come up with these headlines about course correction and Robin Hood and all of that. But I have to say that it's fairly misguided, if I may say that. The reality is that our economic philosophy is being very clearly articulated, both in terms of what was done in the NDA 1 government and what we have articulated through our manifesto, the President's addresses, as well as our budgets. We have said all along that our intent is to transform India through Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. And you remember that on May 20th, 2014, Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji gave a historic speech in the Central Hall of Parliament. He said very clearly that हमारी सरकार गरीबों की सरकार है, गरीबों को समर्पित सरकार है. This was May 20th, 2014. And we have been saying all along that our most important priorities, which were in the President's speech as well, which were in the previous budget as well, are number 1, किसानों की समृद्धि, गरीबों की उन्नति, युवाओं को रोजगार, स्वच्छ, शिक्षित, स्वस्थ भारत. Those are the themes, that's what we are working towards. And what we have really tried to do in this budget and even in the previous budget is to be able to provide sufficient impetus both for the informal rural economy as well as for the modern globalized 21st century urban economy. So really what we've been doing is to strike a balance between both these two aspects of our beloved country, and I think what you're seeing in this budget is really an attempt to do so. So there is no course correction, number 1, and number 2, because this is what we've been doing consistently, and number 2, what we are doing is that we are really making sure that we have enough as far as the modern economy is concerned. And there you can look at what we're doing for Startup India, what we're doing for the banks, what we're doing for Make in India, what we're doing for higher education, where we have said that we will take 20 universities and really free them up. And if you look at what we've done from a liberalizing perspective and what we've done to open up the economy as far as FDI is concerned, then I'm sorry, but I'll have to reject what Shekhar was saying earlier, because really we have shown that we are really bringing forward the 3rd generation of reforms as well.
Just coming to this point about Make in India, something which has been pointed out to me by Vivek, in fact.
You know, I'm sorry, Prannoy, I'll have to interrupt you because
Sorry, go ahead.
I have a terrible echo. I can barely hear you, and every time I speak, I'm getting a very,
so
very
let's
bad echo
just
as
fix
well.
that and just come back to you in 2 minutes. Yeah, I think that's awfully irritating thing to happen. We'll just fix that and just come back to you in a minute. Talking about your Robin Hood, why don't you tell us?
Yeah, so in fact, while we're getting that fixed up, let's just take you through some of those possible Robin Hood aspects of the budget. Maybe we can have that graphic up, and then when we get Jayant back, we'll also show you some of the details around Provident Fund, because clearly there were some steps that were taken. And here, for example, if you can start bringing those up, those are the sort of Robin Hood aspects of this. Tax on super rich, that has gone up. That's at 12 to 15% surcharge now on somebody getting more than ₹1 crore. Dividends in excess of 10 lakh rupees will be taxed now at 10%. So in addition to the dividend distribution tax, that is going to happen. And there are Provident Fund changes that are there will also be targeting the rich. It's not, and that is perhaps to reduce some of that extra subsidy and benefits that the rich or the middle classes used to get, and higher tax on expensive vehicles. So Chandan, there are aspects of this which are to do with trying to show that, you know, we are trying to do something about equality, and we don't want to be particularly kind to the rich. Chandan?
No, I don't think the government ever tried to give that impression that it is something that what was being said absolutely, I would say stupidly and without any basis, ki soot boot ki sarkar. It never was, and all along in every budget, enough provision has been made for the schemes for the upliftment of the really downtrodden, to benefit the really marginalized people in society, and to ensure that the leakages that have been happening through the years, through the 60-70 years of subsidies and various so-called poverty alleviation schemes, those leakages and loop were plugged and benefits reached the poor. This has been the thrust of it was the thrust of the Vajpayee government, and after a 10-year break, they were taken up by the Modi government ever since it came to power 3 years ago. But therefore, there is nothing really dramatically new. But yes, now I think there is enough money to spare to ensure that the schemes are widened, and the sections that really need it, including senior citizens, the farmers, women, housewives, all of them receive a degree of the social security. And this government, after all, has been a pioneer in ensuring social security through its various insurance schemes. And those schemes are now being implemented, and implemented at a great speed.
Right. Anand, you want to quickly comment on this?
Well, actually, Chandan is wrong there. With due respect, I would like to say, because ever since Modi government came in office, social sector has taken a big hit. If you look at the cut in education last year, health, women and child, almost halved. And particularly the tribal sub-plan, the SC sub-plan, and even now, if they have restored some of the cuts, still it is not adequate. In GDP terms, allocation, education is still less, health is still less.
Center and state put together, because state
you
subject.
See, the state,
you must count two together.
Can I tell you? Yes, after the Finance Commission, you are talking of the transfer to the states.
Yes.
4 state budgets have come in already before the union budget. Have we examined it? Because the money which was given to the states, I give you the example of Gujarat. They have not increased the social sector allocation, but actually they have used that money to pay the state debt.
All right. Mr. Sharma, I just want to come back to Jayant. His line has just been fixed, so I just want to come back to the minister and just get... So you were talking about, just to look at some of the numbers, we were just debating this, whether the feasibility of some of the numbers, especially things like the doubling of agricultural income within 5 years. Now that sounds like a really dramatic statement to make, but is it at all feasible? Jayant Sinha.
Achha, sorry Vikram, I couldn't quite hear you very well there.
I was just asking about some of the numbers that are being...
Agricultural income is concerned, we are providing the resources to our farmers through irrigation, through rural roads, and the ability to market their produce. That gives us a lot of confidence that they will in fact be able to double their incomes. We will certainly be looking at what is happening on the MSP side as well, and if necessary make adjustments to MSP so that in fact we can get the doubling of income that we have promised that they will should get. So that's what our efforts are going to be. Obviously we recognize that because of the agrarian distress related to 2 deficient monsoons, which by the way has not happened in the last 30 years, it's very important for us to pay extra attention to the informal rural rural economy, which of course we are doing in this budget. But as I said earlier as well, and I will repeat, we have done a whole host of things for the modern 21st century economy as well, which will really propel and take it forward as well.
Mr. Sinha, now that you've taken the prudent route and stuck to 3.5% budget deficit as a percentage of GDP, and a lot of people have applauded that, is that a signal that you'd like the RBI now to lower interest rates? Would you like to see the RBI lower interest rates?
I certainly, speaking for myself personally, believe that there is the monetary space for RBI to bring down rates. And if you actually look at the two major levers that we have to drive growth, first we have the fiscal side and then we have the monetary side. As you all know very well, the fiscal space is very limited. We are walking a tightrope there with respect to fiscal consolidation. And so we have limited room there to really make growth happen. But if you look at the monetary side and you look at three factors, number one, global aggregate demand, which is quite weak. Number two, interest rates around the world, which in many cases in Japan and the European Union are now negative, in fact, as far as the policy rate is concerned. And you look at inflationary pressures in our own domestic economy, which is quite subdued. You'll conclude, I think, that as far as monetary space is concerned, there's a lot more monetary policy space than there is fiscal policy space. So in that sense, if we really want to drive growth, I think, really the ball is in the RBI's court.
Mr. Sinha, one last very quick question. A lot of people, I think, are interested in some of the changes that have happened around Provident Fund and PF in particular. And I can't tell you how many queries we've got on that. So perhaps you would like to explain just what has happened now, because it seems now that from now onwards, people putting money into PF are going to be taxed when they're withdrawing it in their old age. And that's worrying some people.
Yeah, there's a lot of confusion. Vikram, there's a lot of confusion about this, unfortunately, and I'd like to really clarify this. First of all, everybody needs to understand that whatever they've put in Provident Fund up to this date is going to remain exactly as it was promised, which is EEE. That means there will be no tax on anything to do with Provident Fund, on anything you've put into it so far. Now, going forward, what we need to do is we need to ensure that all our pension plans are on a level playing field. And the pension plans that we have are obviously Provident Fund, NPS, and then other superannuation funds. All three of them will be on a level playing field going forward, and they will move to the NPS regime. The NPS regime is exempt, which means you put money in on a tax-free basis, is exempt in terms of how it grows on a tax-deferred basis. And then on withdrawal, here's what happens. Please, this you should pay attention to, because this is where the confusion is. What happens is that you can withdraw 40% from any of these pension plans without paying any tax. So going forward, you can, you accumulate 10, 20, 25 years. When you withdraw it 25 years from now, 40% you pay no tax at all. 60% if you put that in an annuity, you pay no tax, and the annuity of course guarantees you retirement income, and the annuity also passes tax-free to your heirs who will continue to receive it as tax-free income, and there's no tax if you buy an annuity and get yourself retirement income. On the other hand, if you take out that 60% and don't buy an annuity and take it as a one-time withdrawal and want to consume it in that year, then yes, you will have to pay tax on the prevailing rate at that point. Because you see, what you're doing then is you're defeating the purpose of retirement savings. The idea of retirement savings is to be able to provide you ongoing income.
Right. Mr. Sinha, I think you're still having a little problem with your hearing. We'll just take a 2-minute break. They'll fix it. Because if you're getting an echo, I think neither anchors nor politicians should ever hear themselves speak, right? We'll fix it and we'll come back in 2 minutes. Please stay there. Well, I'd just like to say once again what I said a little earlier, that today's budget is one of the more interesting budgets there has been in several years. It certainly gave me a lot to think about, lots to hope about, lots to worry about. Much of it may be big ideas, at least there are big ideas in it, but with no real path to implementation, so that's the worry. But it's stimulating to at least have big ideas and a distinct focus. The previous budgets have been, in fact, I just mentioned to quote Mr. Chidambaram, last two budgets have been rather forgettable. But what Mr. Chidambaram forgot to add was that his budgets too were rather forgettable. This one is a bit different. It pushes the envelope. It certainly enthused me and it has worried me at the same time. So we'll be looking at questions that you have always wanted to ask about this budget and were afraid to raise your voice. Here's the time, because we have some of the best experts with us, and we have the man of the match along with the finance minister. We have Jayant Sinha here also. And Jayant Sinha, you've given us two headlines right now. One is that you'd like to see the RBI, now that you've been prudent, to actually lower interest rates and give a boost to Indian industry. And two, that in the Provident Fund, the fear that when you take your money out, it's going to be taxed. It won't be taxed, is it? I just want to clarify. It won't be taxed if you put that, take it out and put it into an annuity. Is that right?
Well, first of all, I want to explain, Prannoy, that this is only prospectively. Everything you've done so far is going to, this is prospective, right? So prospectively, if 15 years, 20 years from now, you withdraw your money and you don't put it into an annuity, then 60%, yes, of course, you will have to pay tax on it. But if you take 60% out and put it into an annuity, then the income from that annuity will be tax-free.
Will be tax-free?
No, taxable.
Taxable, just?
Yes.
Will be taxed or not taxed?
It will not be taxed. Let me once again repeat. If you take, suppose you have 100 rupees in your Provident Fund when you retire 25 years from now.
Right.
You take 40% of it, 40 rupees of it out, you don't pay any taxes.
Right.
You take then the 60 rupees and you put it into an annuity that pays you, let's say, 5 rupees a year. Okay, as an annuity.
Right.
That 5 rupees a year you don't pay any tax on, and that money that you've transferred into the annuity, that goes in tax free. So the 60, on that 60 you don't pay any taxes.
Okay, that's a major clarification actually.
Yeah, that's a huge clarification, and I think that settles a lot of the concerns that people had. Just wanted to confirm one other thing. What you are talking about, this applies just to PF, or does it also apply to the PPF, the Public Provident Fund?
No, it applies to all the pension funds going forward, because we want to make sure all pension funds are on a level playing field. What we have right now for NPS is what's going to apply to all of these pension funds going forward, and that's to make sure that you are indifferent to putting your money in NPS or in the Provident Fund or any other pension fund when you think about your long-term savings.
There's one issue which I'd like a clarification, and this is pointed out by Vivek Mehra. And Vivek, if I'm getting this wrong, please clarify. I'm just saying it for television because you're a little above my head, let alone Dorab's. There's a little in this 25% corporate tax. It goes a little bit against Make in India, because the companies that actually take exemptions are manufacturing companies, and they pay under 20%. And the companies that don't get exemptions are really financials and VCs and people like that, and they pay 30%. Now, if you bring everybody to 25, the manufacturing companies will actually be not getting the exemptions and be paying, going from 20 to 25, and the financial companies will be coming down from 30 to 25. So Make in India, you want to give exemptions, that you want to invest, you want to hire labor, you want depreciation, you want research. So are you, by removing exemptions, going a little bit against the spirit of Make in India?
No, that's not right, Prannoy, because the reality is that if you look at Make in India, the notion there is that manufacturing in India has to be globally competitive. So we've fixed the inverted duty structures, we've fixed, any tax, problems that we have when we compete against China, Vietnam, and so on. And we made domestic industry a lot more competitive. Now, after we make domestic industry a lot more competitive in terms of input costs, infrastructure costs, and so on, what actually happens to profits, whether it is taxed at the rate that you're mentioning or at a slightly higher rate, I think is less important. What is more important is to ensure that the industries, their production costs and the overall competitiveness is absolutely world class.
Although I do feel there is a point there, and this is Vivek Mehra, that it is slightly manufacturing, and do think about it. We don't need to solve the problem right now, because globally people do get incentives, do get exemptions, and that's an issue that one needs to think about, whether everybody gets equally hurt in this business.
Right. Mr. Sinha, I want to welcome Piyush Goyal also onto the program, the Minister for Coal and Power. But Piyush, before we come to you, just one last question to you, Mr. Jayant Sinha, before you leave us, another clarification. Something else that is there in the documents that perhaps many people missed when we first saw it, potentially could be something very significant when it comes to startup and the entire startup environment that this government is trying to facilitate. And it says that individuals who are investing capital gains in startups, in notified startups, capital gains tax will not be paid. Is there some catch in this, or is that what it sounds like? That if you're selling a house, you're making profits, you can actually go and put that entire money into a startup and there'll be no capital gains, because that's potentially something that will really drive a lot of investment.
Yeah, and of course, we are defining capital gains as being 2 years in length at least. So you have to be invested for 2 years. But basically, the notion is that we want to encourage angel investing in these notified startups, and that's why that policy has been put together.
No, but Mr. Sinha.
But you know what, Vikram, I don't know whether one quick thing. Right. I don't know whether you all have discussed this in your show or not, but one of the very important highlights of this budget that I don't think is getting the recognition that it deserves is what we're doing in higher education. We have said that we will take 20 universities and free them up to compete with the world's best. We'll create a higher education financing agency that will ensure that adequate resources will be available for these 20 universities and for a host of other public and private universities as well.
Just
with these two actions, we are actually fundamentally transforming the higher education sector in India. This is very much by design. This is very much because for Startup India, for the entrepreneurial ecosystem, we want innovation to really, really flourish in India.
Yeah, but I just want to get back to that Startup India, and it sounds great that you've got capital gains, put it in startup. But
could I ask Jen something?
Just one second. The footnotes to it worry me a bit. You have to put it into a notified startup. Now that sounds awful. How do I get my startup notified? Number two, it's only 50 lakhs. And number three, you have to own a majority of that startup at 50 lakhs. So, you know, the footnotes make it a little impractical.
No, it's not at all. Notified startup is something that we have explained very carefully on multiple occasions. The notion here is that these have to be genuine startups, not people exploiting loopholes for their companies. So that's why we are saying that these are notified startups which have a venture capital or angel investment. And I think that's a very straightforward way of ensuring that we are providing incentives for the right kinds of companies. And this is really intended for angel investing, people coming in, putting their own money to get companies going.
50 lakhs and a majority. I feel sorry for that startup. One last thing. Disappointment generally on the retrospective tax. A lot was talked about it, but bottom line, nothing really seems to be changed. They still have to pay tax. They won't accept it. There'll be uproar over this. If you could clarify, what is the position now on retrospective tax and Vodafone? Will Vodafone have to pay or not?
We have provided a pathway for closure as far as this very important issue is concerned. We have said that with just payment of principal, we will be able to, in good faith, close out these negotiations and put these issues behind us once and for all. So we provided that pathway to closure. That's right. So we are waiving all interest and all penalties.
Right. All right, Mr.
Well, I think each SSE is going to have to decide that.
Right.
All right, Mr.
Thank
Sinha,
you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for bringing a lot of clarity, and especially on that PF front. Piyush Goyal, let me welcome you. And Piyush, for starters, just wanted to compliment you on, we've been discussing this in the last few days in the run-up to the budget, that your sector been one of the sectors that has really been performing. And I think Prannoy was saying earlier, a lot of the money that is now being spent is also on some of the sectors that have actually been performing. Are you happy with the sort of money that is now being set aside to really drive the power sector and to drive infrastructure spending in general?
Oh, more than satisfied. In fact, the power sector today has become quite self-sufficient. We really are not looking for any big deal of SOPs. We do have our Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gram Jyoti Yojana and the IPDS, both of which will help us not only reach power to the millions of people deprived for the last 68 years, but will also help us upgrade the last mile connectivity so that we can actually have a vibrant sector reaching 24/7 power for all at affordable prices. Overall, if you see the infrastructure spending, I think brilliant effort has gone in, first in the rail budget, now in this budget in terms of allocating large amounts for rural roads, large amounts for the National Highways Program, a dispute resolution mechanism for public utilities and PPP projects, which will help us resolve a lot of the past mess that we had inherited. I think all in all, this is a transformational budget in that it will help this nation create a strong foundation on the back of which 125 crore aspirations can be met.
Actually, what Vikram was referring to, I asked the question that the three ministries or the three ministers that are doing well have got all the money. So go where the action is. Bijli, Sadak, and railways here. So does this mean good economics is good politics?
Well, in my view, good economics and good politics are not divorced from each other. Of course, just to correct the perception, the power sector has received the least amount of money because I never asked for any more. We are really the people who give money to the finance minister, be it through disinvestment, be it through increased cess on coal, which I'm delighted he has put in because it demonstrates India's commitment as a globally responsible citizen. We do not want pollution to be encouraged. At the same time, that cess money is being used for two very good purposes. Renewable energy, particularly transmission lines for that, and for Namami Gange, cleaning the Ganga. So to my mind, my sector can stand on its own feet. Uday scheme will help us save nearly 1,80,000 crores annually, which will more than make up for any small cesses that may come along the way.
Piyush, one of the exceptions to that, I guess, is new and renewable energy, where the amount that has been allocated is staggeringly higher than the earlier amount. I think last year the revised estimate was something like 262 crore rupees, and the budgetary allocation 5,036. That's some 20 times more. Is there something happening there that we should all know about?
Vikram, you are all well aware that Prime Minister has significantly scaled up the targets of renewable energy. In fact, today, India is running the world's largest renewable energy program, 175 gigawatts as against 34 gigawatts when we came into government. That's a 5x kind of growth, unparalleled in the history of mankind and very well appreciated both in Paris at the COP21 and even worldwide in our engagements with world leaders. And obviously, we are spending some of this money to support domestic manufacturing, to encourage rooftop solar, to help this sector get that initial push in terms of transmission ability and stuff like that. And all of it is coming out of coal cess. So it's one hand paying to support the other hand. It's no stress on the finance minister.
I just want to go beyond power and talk about sorry, the overall budget, since you have...
by the way, can I take a minute? I just got a message about 7 or 8 minutes ago. India's EESL, the energy efficiency company, government company, has just crossed 7 crore LED bulb sale. 7 crore bulbs in 11 months between April and today, February 29. In the last 2 years ago, this company used to do 6 lakh bulbs in a year. Now it is doing 8 lakh bulbs every day and has just crossed 7 crore just a few minutes ago. I thought it's a piece of good news I could share with your viewers.
That's wonderful. Can I move a bit beyond just power and budget deficits and talk about something which a person raised in the post-budget discussions? You know, there are a lot of taxes have been increased on cars, on luxury cars, which are all fine, and on cigarettes as usual, but no increase in tax on BDs. Now, BDs are extremely cancerous. Why have you, I mean, that's a huge decision. Let the poor smoke something which gives them cancer. Why is that?
No, I don't. I think you need to get this verified from some of the doctors. But I remember many years ago what we were told is that it's the filter in the cigarette which is most damaging. And I think BD does not use any filter. So I don't know, maybe a doctor would be better equipped to speak about it. I'm not the right guy for
tobacco curing.
You're a non-smoker.
You have a view on that? Cigarettes versus BD?
I'm a non-smoker.
No, absolutely. I think this is there's a political lobby on BD, and no party wants to touch it. Congress doesn't want to touch it. It's shocking because too many political leaders, in many parts of the country, they have colleges, private colleges, they have they have hospitals, they have cooperative banks, and they have BD business. Right. So this cuts really deep, and to say that let the poor kill themselves is really shameful.
And pan masala.
Pan masala, yes.
Very cancerous.
Yeah, but at least a net tax is there. But BD has no taxes. It's almost incentivizing people at the lower levels, or say lower middle classes, to say give up cigarettes, go down to BDs. And this is a rural legend, not urban legend.
Right.
Rural legend that BDs are less unsafe. BDs are actually enormously more unsafe.
Prannoy, perhaps you should get some couple of views from industry and throw that to Piyush as well. Sumit Mazumdar as well as, of course, President CII, and Siddharth Birla as well, past President FICCI.
Piyush and I have never smoked a cigarette, so I think Piyush is the wrong guys.
Okay.
But my father smoked all his life, so I know what cigarettes do to you.
Okay. So we just get some of these comments and then throw them to Piyush, including from Shashi Tharoor, who's just written a blog for NDTV.com, Prannoy, saying if this was an exam, try a little harder, or words to that effect. And I just throw that as well. But Mr. Mazumdar, now that you've had a day to look at this, any specific points that you would like to throw at the government?
You talk about an exam. The Prime Minister himself said that tomorrow I'm up for an exam.
That's, I think, what he was responding.
Yeah.
The marks would be, or the examiner would say, try a little harder. That's what he's tweeted.
Yes. No, but I would say that he's come out with flying colors. I think it's a well-rounded budget which addresses issues for all sections of the society. There's a lot of emphasis on rural sector, which I think is good, because the biggest advantage of a rural, these are all measures which will bring demand in. Today there's a shortage of demand, and mostly the investments that is happening is by the government. And there's a recognition that the private sector is really not investing that much. But if the demand is stimulated, the private sector unfortunately has already got excess capacity, and they need demand. And I believe this budget is very good at creating this required demand, whether it's infrastructure or rural or whatever.
Mr. Birla, would you concur with that? Yeah. Or any other comments you have on the budget?
No, broadly, I do concur with that. I think the budget has pressed some of the right points. We've been saying for some time that demand revival is going to be essential to drive further manufacturing investment as well as service investment. And right now, the two places where India was failing was basically demand both in the urban as well as particularly in the rural areas. And if we were to build infrastructure, now the infrastructure building will provide employment and money going down to the ground level, which is by way of wages, as well as I think it will help pull up two of the industries that are not doing so well right now, which is steel and cement. So I think it has a dual-edged sword, dual-edged cutting sword over there. And agriculture is very, very important, because if agricultural incomes are not sustained, we are going to have a fresh pressure of people wanting to move out of agriculture, and that will add to the already strained position of providing employment. So I think a stability and a long-term future in agriculture is also very essential. So I think the budget has addressed these 2 points.
I think this emphasis on demand is absolutely right, but I think we should all actually take 1 minute silence and pray that the one thing that affects demand is out of our hands, and that's the monsoon. And the other thing that affects our demand is the global economy, and that's out of our hands. But anyway, we have to do the best.
I'd like to respond to that. I disagree with you. I'll tell you why.
That is not law that has more impact than...
Also, we've never had 3 consecutive droughts.
Right, but you've got the El Nino that may have a triple one.
No, but El Nino is one of the factors. But you know,
I know.
in the history of monsoons in 110 years, we've only had 3 examples of 2-year droughts.
Right.
3 years never.
The point I wanted to make is there's a lot of focus on irrigation. I think that's the route we need to take.
Correct.
We've got to go irrigation. We've got to go modern farming. That's the way to go.
All right, Shashi Tharoor, the blog that you've just written, if this is an exam, try a little bit harder. Why are you saying that? And then we'll get Piyush to respond.
Well, Prannoy, first of all, I was trying to get a word in at 9 o'clock when Jayant Sinha was making certain claims that you were all applauding for clarity when they were anything but. He talked about the 60% of your provident fund and pension funds that will be taxed, and he said if you put it into an annuity, it won't be taxed, the income won't be taxed. The problem is if you look at the reasons why people withdraw money from their provident fund, the top 3 reasons are to buy a home, usually for retirement, to buy land, or to meet a medical emergency. These are all genuine needs. These are the reasons why people save. And this government has gone and put the salaried saver in a position where money that he hoped to spend for these things will not reach him in the amount that he had expected and worked for. So it's actually an outrageous decision by the BJP to which we will object, and I'm shocked that you let him off the hook when he said if you put it into an annuity, the income won't be taxed. People don't put their provident fund money into an annuity. They don't take it out of one saving to put in another saving. They use it as a saving for genuine emergency needs. Second thing, on higher education. He actually made a virtue of the BJP's disgraceful record on higher education, cutting the budget for 2 successive years. Last year we had objected when they gave 1,000 crores for 5 new IITs, saying the sum was manifestly not enough by Government of India's own yardsticks. This year they've given 190 crores. Not even the 1,000 that wasn't enough, they've given 190 crores for 5 IITs. How do you expect an IIT to be developed on 190 divided by 5? Now, these are the kinds of questions. I mean, essentially the government makes glib claims, but their numbers don't add up and they don't bear any reality, any connection to what the actual needs of the particular objective are. They've talked about numbers in the most bewildering manner. Last year they talked about divestment to the tune of something like 69,000 and change is what they said they would raise. They actually succeeded in raising 25,000. And despite the sort of dose of cold water on their faces from this experience, they've once again come in with a claim of 59,000 as money coming from divestment this year. Where is all this money going to come from? I mean, we've had Piyush talking about energy, and I have a great deal of respect for Piyush. But we've just made all these extraordinary promises in Paris at the climate change conference, COP21, with all sorts of incredibly ambitious things that have been costed at 20 trillion over the next 20 years. And there's not one penny that's been given for this. In fact, the Ministry of Environment and Forests has seen its budget cut from 1466 crores last year to 466 this year. So, I mean, I'm sorry, the numbers are the answer. I'm afraid this budget is an embarrassment.
Piyush?
Well, I can keep rebutting each one of what he said. Regarding the Provident Fund, I think Jayant has already explained. There's a level playing field being brought in. And very clearly, if there is a need of an emergency, the same annuity fund has a provision for a short-term loan. But the idea is that we should have a person getting social security for the rest of his life, not take out the money and consume it. So I think the purpose of savings and creating pension schemes is to provide continuity of income, and that is why we want to encourage people. They can withdraw up to 40%, the balance they can put back into an annuity. He spoke about some so-called tall claims at COP21, or where is the money for education, IITs, each of these. I'd like to inform Mr. Tharoor, first of all, that $20 trillion, I don't know where he got that figure. We have committed to do 175 gigawatt of renewable energy as against 34 gigawatts which we inherited. Now our style is different. We bring in great deal of transparency. We bring in economies of scale, invite the world participants to come and actively compete with each other. And I'm happy to report to Shashi through you that we have been able to bring down solar prices to below grid parity from about 7.5 rupees. The last bid came in at 4 rupees 30 paisa. So broadly bids are about 4.5 rupees or so, which is below what it costs a coal-based unit of energy today. So
Piyush, in Paris we have promised to create a carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons.
Government support for that. Sorry?
We have promised at Paris to increase our share of non-fossil fuel to 40% by 2030. We promise a carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons. All this costs money, Piyush.
So
where is the money in the budget?
Not at all. I'll explain it to you. It will not cost government money. It's the profitable business venture today. Today we've made renewable energy very attractive in terms of a fixed price for 25 years, discovered through a transparent bidding process, and it gives so much energy security. And for your information, it's 40% of our installed capacity. In fact, we may reach it much before 2030 without government spending any money. And whatever little we need to do in terms of transmission lines, for that I have the coal cess money, which we have increased to 400 rupees.
I'd just like to...
So I think I don't need any more funds. All my plans are credible. Village electrification is going on really fast. The latest number, in fact, in the earlier interview, half an hour back, the number was 5899. I just checked my mobile phone app and it's now reached 5914. So we've already done 5914 villages. By March, it will be 7,000 villages.
Piyush Goyal, I just want to bring in a completely different... I want to bring in a completely different aspect, which is both extremely encouraging and exciting about the budget, but also worrying. And the man who can really answer this is Arun Gupta, because you know IT very well, and IT and the Aadhaar, giving more power behind the Aadhaar. They're going to bring a bill in, which I think is a wonderful thing. But it's so ambitious. Can it be done? You're a different generation to all of us.
Well, why not? I mean, this government has proved time and again that it can implement large schemes. I mean, the world's biggest financial inclusion happened here in India in less than a year. We added 200 million accounts, 20 crore accounts in a year.
Bank accounts.
Yes. It's more than double the banking capacity of India in less than a year.
But Dorab has a point on that.
No, a fair number of the accounts have no balance in the cost to service, and I don't think the government's paying the banks to service them.
No,
a blank account.
That is untrue. The percentage has come down drastically because the DBT process is slowly increasing.
No, as it increases.
And financial literacy is increasing. The percentage has come down to low double digits and 11 to 12% of accounts with no money.
Of how many million accounts? Of 400 million accounts?
Of 200 million accounts. That's
32% is the current figure.
No, that's an incredible achievement. Today we have 99.97 coverage of households with financial inclusion.
Piyush, at the end of the day, the entire DBT, it's being tried in fertilizer. Sorry, Arun, you want to finish what you were saying?
I want to say that. See, the previous regime brought in Aadhaar, but they were using it primarily as, I would say, a political tool. I think we are using this as a governance tool, as a technology platform for huge reforms in the country. This whole Jan Dhan Aadhaar mobile ideology is absolutely new. You had Aadhaar identity. Let me complete that. You had an Aadhaar identity platform, but no accounts, no accounts to give the money in. That was not complete, and no mobile numbers.
Does JAM take your idea forward, Ashwini? At the end of the day, Aadhaar was your idea, but they've taken it one step forward, which you should welcome.
I thought my friend was introduced as an IT expert. He's speaking more like a politician. Now look, every government, every government has a right to claim for itself achievements which are legitimately its own achievements. At least, for heaven's sake, give us the due for what we have done. Aadhaar was our brainchild. We brought it till now, and you want to claim credit for taking the financial inclusion to 200 crores? I can tell you that Mrs. Gandhi and Manmohan Singh had inaugurated in Vigyan Bhavan the day we reached a particular number of accounts. Now, having said that, I want to talk about a larger issue.
I would like to just say one thing. In the middle of all this, there's one man, Nandan Nilekani, that implemented it and straddled both politicians. Yeah. I'm very happy to see that.
One thing I want to tell you, and I think, Prannoy, you started by asking the right question. Is this a forgettable budget or is it an unforgettable budget? It is of course a forgettable budget because it's high on rhetoric, great platitudes, but really no action plan, as you yourself said. It is unforgettable.
I didn't call them platitudes. I said great ideas, and if they are implemented, it will not be a it will be an unforgettable budget.
I will say that there is no pathways shown for implementing the grandiose ideas, even assuming they are one. And just one moment. I'm appalled. I'm really appalled when someone like Mr. Arun Jaitley, as the finance minister, says that he seeks to double farm incomes in 5 years. I'll be the happiest person if that happens. But that involves 14% plus annual growth, which is a physical impossibility.
Okay,
and
let me
we
get
all know that.
Piyush, one final quick comment from you. One on DBT. Piyush, on DBT is that. Yeah, sorry, carry on, Piyush. You can respond to that doubling of
seems to have not understood.
Finish what I did to say.
I think most Congress persons have not understood what doubling farm income means. They mistake it to double the minimum support price.
No, you got it all wrong. You got it all wrong.
Is basically taking the income that the farmers have to twice the current level.
Yes.
And that is very much doable. It's doable because inflation is under check. It's doable because we are taking through the Pradhan Mantri Sinchai Yojana irrigation to the farmers. It's doable because we are ensuring they get adequate electricity. It's doable because we are focusing on proper seeds, soil health cards. With all of these measures, with inflation under check, doubling of farm incomes is 100% doable.
Piyush, doubling of any income within 5 years, I don't think in history has actually ever happened.
In any country.
Not in agriculture.
15 to 16%.
Never in agriculture.
It can only happen if Vinod Rai is assigned the task of counting. That is the only way to do it.
With hyperinflation, it can occur. With hyperinflation, it can occur.
No, real income. Real income. Real income.
Budget doesn't say real income.
Real income. No.
Sorry, Piyush, finish what you were saying.
It's not inflation-adjusted income, of course.
Absolutely.
It is
Piyush.
not
On the face of it incredible.
They've had
in the best of times,
more than doubled.
Agriculture has not grown by more than 4% per annum.
Okay, Piyush, 15-16% CAGR is very tough to achieve.
Income.
Piyush,
I know what we are
cut
talking
your
about.
losses here.
The big difference between production and income.
Look, I think I'll make a contrarian point on this provident fund taxing. I think, frankly, if the government holds its nerve, it is the boldest reform in this budget. Because salaried classes, of which I've been one, and I can now say it because my salaried life is over, right? The fact is that you get your contribution tax exempt, you get your employer's contribution tax exempt. So 17% of your CTC is tax exempt. On that, you get the highest possible return, 8.5%, 9%.
It's a huge,
higher than anything,
totally
tax-free.
I totally
so there's
agree.
a tax exemption at every level. Then you want to take it out lump sum and pay no tax. This is robbery. So I think also, if you want interest rates
subsidy,
if you want, yes, it's the most obscene subsidy. If you want interest rates to go down in your system across the board, then you have to bring down interest income also in savings with the government. And I think if they can hold their nerve, it will be a wonderful reform. It will make people go towards other instruments.
And Shekhar, actually, if you look at the economic survey, it says that 12,000 crore rupees of that subsidy of PPF alone was actually going to the rich. So it's not something which is only going to the
Prannoy, you allowed the MOS finance go away on retrospective taxation. I have something important to say on this.
Please say.
I want to understand what is it that they have done. The finance minister announced, and I was in the house. He said, in future, we will not go for retrospective tax. No problem with that. Last year, they said, as far as the current tax demands are concerned, they will have to meet muster and they will have to be decided according to the law. Today, they have unfolded a mechanism, conciliation, by virtue of which, if the assessee withdraws his appeal, interest and penalty goes. I want to ask this question. Consistent with the law that was introduced in 2012, and which has not been recalled, how can this be done in the first place? This is the sleight of hand, and thousands of crores of tax due from foreign corporations, including some of the large Indian corporations, will just be lost to the
but you know, you can scarcely afford to lecture them on retrospective
I
tax.
will.
It's your fault.
What is our fault?
It's the UPA's fault.
No, I'm so sorry.
You've saddled the country with this mess.
I'm saying, you haven't caught on. I'm saying we were upfront about it. We said, we took a conscious view that in our
judgment... You're upfront about the fact you've taken a disastrous decision that has severely damaged India's reputation in the world.
Vikram, one moment.
Can I comment on that? Mr. Chidambaram has said BJP has the majority, they should have withdrawn it, Congress party would have supported
Vikram, I am only
You've done two things.
I am only saying you can...
Aadhaar and retrospective. Take credit for both.
Yeah. No, I'm saying, I'm sorry.
One good, one bad.
I'm saying you could argue whether a retrospective clarification was right or wrong. I have no difficulty with that point of view.
No, was it right or wrong?
No, I'm saying you can argue.
No, what do you feel?
I'm saying perhaps it ought not to have been done.
Okay,
but
so
the then finance minister took a view, and a very senior finance minister took a view. Now that law has not been withdrawn. Now you say we will not go in for retrospective taxation in the future. Fine, no problem. At the same time you say, but as far as the current demands are also concerned, we will let them also go. If they choose to withdraw, interest goes, penalty goes. Why? Where are the equities? Where are the equities?
Vivek, why don't you answer that? Because you know this inside out.
It's also a political question, it's not only a financial question.
Mr. Chidambaram also made a statement that we were almost going to settle the Vodafone matter. I wonder how it was being settled. But today, the fact is that it was a withholding tax, sir. It was not a substantive tax on the buyers. It was only withholding tax, a retrospective amendment effecting an action that happened before that clarification came. How can you recover the tax? So I think there are serious issues on whether it is recoverable at all, and what the finance minister possibly, I would have preferred if he had withdrawn the retrospective amendment.
I could understand that.
But what he has tried to do is get some money into the kitty, maybe by having a settlement of tax alone.
Okay, let's just quickly get Rahul Bajaj and Naina Lal Kidwai joining us. Quickly, your take on some of the stuff that we've been seeing and things like retrospective tax. Do you think today was a day when it could have finally been settled, or it should have been settled?
Mr. Bajaj, as I mentioned earlier, be careful how you speak, because when you speak, India changes. India listens to you. So be yourself.
No. As far as retrospective tax is concerned, being myself is not a problem. That's very easy. Prannoy, as far as retrospective tax is concerned, that has been a very bad, unfortunate situation in the last 3-4 years in this country. Someone I hold in very high regard, Mr. Pranab Mukherjee, when he was a finance minister, we know he brought it up for whatever reasons. And initially, when the government lost the thing in the Supreme Court, I think it was ITC, and Mr. Chidambaram was the finance minister, he changed the law retrospectively. So we won't go into the history. The fact remains, it was brought by the UPA government. After that, they had a year or two. I heard Mr. Chidambaram, whom also I hold in high regard, saying we were very near settlement. Fact remains, there was no settlement. They did have enough time. So they were finding it difficult. The question today, what the government has said, penalty and interest, of course they will give up. I mean, they can never recover that as far as I'm concerned. But the whole amount, the initial amount is in thousands of crores. That's what Vodafone is disputing. And the others are disputing their amounts. And the question is, they are not willing to let it go. So they say, let the courts decide. They didn't appeal the last judgment of the Mumbai High Court or something like that. So ultimately, there's a lot of uncertainty. Even after listening to Mr. Jaitley today, I don't know exactly what is this government's position on retrospective. Future, they won't bring it.
What does it do to the
historical cases?
What does it do to the image of India? How does it affect the image of India?
Say that this is all gone, closed chapter, and let Congress say they will support them and they will not fight with them in the Rajya Sabha, leave alone in the Lok Sabha, and the matter will be over and India can move forward. Because this retrospective thing was wrong.
Right. Naina Kidwai, I just wanted to get you in on one of the other major issues that was being discussed in the run-up to the budget, which is, of course, the state of the banks, which is one of the big systemic concerns that we have in the Indian economy. We did see some of the steps being done, both directly and indirectly, to try and sort out the banks and the twin deficit, sort of with the twin balance sheet issue. To your mind, are the banks safer after the budget than they were before?
Well, safer to the extent of 25,000 crores at any rate.
because we have seen money that has actually been committed to recapitalizing the banks, and a strong statement from the finance minister that he will stand solidly behind the banks in case more is required. Is it enough? Clearly, when we know that at a minimum it's 1.8 lakh crore that's required, 25,000 crores is part of that journey, not the whole of it. But I think we have to see it in the more holistic way in terms of what is happening with the NPAs as well, which is the settling of projects which have caused the NPAs in the first place. And in roads in particular, the finance minister announced that 85% of the stalled projects have actually been sorted through. I don't believe we're there yet for other sectors, including steel in particular, to some extent power. But work is underway, and I think that is the right way to look at this. You have to tackle the NPA even while you recapitalize the banks, and simultaneously look at governance structures as the banking bureau, which has been announced, and I'm sure that with Vinod Rai at the helm, they will bring the right structures there as well. The bankruptcy law, unfortunately stuck, but seriously required, and they've touched on SARFACI as well. So the problem is being looked at holistically, which is a good thing.
Rahul Bajaj, I must, now that you've seen and read the intricacies of the budget for the last 6 hours, 2 good things and 2 bad things in this budget.
Are you asking me?
Well, the one
Rahul
good thing,
Bajaj,
as I see it, one can debate it. So the one good thing that I see is that the corporate sector's major problem for most of us in the manufacturing area, Prannoy, was lack of demand. As I've said earlier today, we have excess capacity, most of us in our manufacturing plants, and obviously that's why, because of that, we are not making investments. Only when demand increases and we start fully utilizing our capacity, and of course a little advance of that, we shall make investments to expand our capacity so that we can take advantage of rising demand. And I think with all this money that is going to be spent in rural, farm, irrigation, land, etc., roads, demand has to increase. Now, there will be a time lag. It may take 6 months, 12 months, or even longer. I don't know about that. I don't have time to go into that. But that's the main thing corporate sector wanted. I mean, we don't want money from the government. We don't want a small incentive here and a small incentive there. We pay taxes to the government. We don't take money from them. We want only an environment. And yes, ease of doing business is what we want, which this government is promising. Something has been done, but not enough. Much more is required for ease of doing business, apart from building infrastructure, apart from labor laws, etc., etc. But the one very major thing is the hope that demand will be created with all this money being spent.
All right,
bad thing, I can't offhand, I'm sure there are some bad things there, but no, I don't see, I mean, many more things could have been done, but I can't see anything seriously wrong or bad. The opposition will have lots to say, but we in the corporate sector, I mean, there's a tax on dividend over 10 lakhs, 12.5% has become 15% for income of over 1 crore. Both of these will hit me much more than most people in India. But so what? I think that's only reasonable that the rich also pay something.
So what is what you say?
I'm not kidding about that. I think they are welcome.
Good for you.
That's good for you to say. I'm sure the finance minister would be glad to hear it. I would like to welcome now Ravi Shankar Prasad, the telecom minister, joining us. Mr. Prasad, thanks a lot for being with us. We're trying to now wrap up our analysis of the entire budget and trying to make some sense of everything that we've seen. The point that Rahul Bajaj was making was something that the finance minister also did touch upon. The ease of doing business, trust the citizens, try and have a simpler tax structure that is a bit more compliant. Some steps in that direction, but do you still think this is only a glass half full? We could be a country where it's much easier to do business and a tax regime and a tax department that could be a lot more cooperative than it is.
Well, Vikram, if you see, in 1 year's time, in the ease of doing business index, we jumped 12 points. You have seen that. Self-certification is the norm. As a telecom minister, I have come with a policy initiative of spectrum trading, spectrum sharing, pending for the last 10 years. And it's such a huge transaction also. The form self-certification we have insisted. And if you don't comply, then we will certainly come with a very serious consequences. Therefore, self-certification has become the norms. Today, everything is available online. The rules of the games are too well known. And today, in the entire income tax structure, the way Honorable the Finance Minister, I need to compliment him, has come out with a lot of new initiative for settlement of disputes, for further minimizing of litigation, including those cases pending with retrospective issues, is quite welcome. For lack of time, I am not going to the details of it, but large number of new initiative in case of dispute resolution in income tax and pending cases has been there. Apart from other initiative of tax incentive for the housing sector, for the other sectors, we have seen that. I know for sure in electronic manufacturing, a lot of new incentives have come to make India a big hub of manufacturing. Vikram, I am happy to tell you that in last year, 10 crore mobile phones were manufactured in India. This was in 2014 only 40-50 lakhs, 2013 4-5 lakhs. That is the scale we are looking up. Therefore, new initiative in terms of fiscal consolidation, fiscal deficit, tax resolution, new incentive, and also simplifying the entire duty structure are all designed to make India's economy more stronger, more resilient. That's how I see it.
So you're a lawyer, and there's a lot of disappointment in the statements made on the retrospective tax. We've just been through it all. It would be very interesting to have your view. You've always been saying we've got to get rid of it, but it just doesn't seem to go away. It is damaging India's image, according to everybody on this table and on this show.
I have two takes on that, Dr. Roy. The Prime Minister and the Finance Minister have very clearly stated that retrospective taxation is now a closed chapter. The issue is about the pending cases.
Correct.
Most notably the Vodafone case. Let me clarify on the Vodafone issue. We ultimately did not challenge the Bombay High Court judgment, giving them a lot of benefit on taxing issues. It was a huge fiscal involvement, but we did not go in appeal consciously. And on behalf of the cabinet decision, I had announced to the public through a press conference. But Dr. Roy, I will, and as far as arbitration issues are pending, and in even today's budget, a new window is there, provision for settlement also in case of pending cases also. But Dr. Roy, I have to raise a larger issue. Vodafone's retrospective issue should not become the only benchmark to seeing India as a good investment destination. The IMF doesn't think like that. The World Economic Forum doesn't think like that. Other bodies don't think like that.
But the IMF and the World Economic Forum aren't your main investors. Private investors and large corporations are. So these are
just a minute.
World Economic Forum is not relevant in this issue.
Dr. Roy, we have the highest FDI in the last 5 years.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm only saying telecom sector has got the highest FDI in the last 5 years. I know for sure. The telecom minister is talking to you. The total FDI, Arun ji said in the budget, is the highest in the last so many years. But Dr. Roy, let me again put a question to you. Indian companies have invested so much in America in the last 5 years, more than what the American companies have invested in India. Do they have taxing problems or not? Do they go to court to settle it or not? The same is the case in England, in Europe. But do we say that, sorry, Ravi, Indian investment will become under cloud if you do like this?
Shekhar, got a question.
Ravi,
dispute.
Ravi, the question is different. The question is different. Companies can go to court, but what happens when companies win in court? In this case, the company that went to court won in the Supreme Court of India, and then Government of India said, might is right, we'll make the law 50 years retrospectively. That is the problem.
That hasn't happened in any country.
Problem is not company going into tax litigation. Problem is, after losing the case in the highest court in the land, we change the law. That is not the way. You know, you play a game of cricket and they say, no, this wasn't cricket, this was kabaddi. Right? It doesn't work like that.
Shekhar, we did not do it. Correct, the previous government did
it. We as
now an arbitration is pending.
We are all citizens.
We are finding a way out to it.
This is our government. It's our constitution. Well, it's our president who signed that budget.
And secondly, on the whole issue of Vodafone, I explained what other measures we have taken. I just now explained to you.
Why can't we just say sorry, we messed up on this?
No, I think it's not only a question of doing the right thing. It's also a question of doing it the right way. My issue is, without recalling the 2012 law. It may be a bad law if somebody wants to believe it.
Terrible law, shocking law.
Fine.
No other country in the world has done it.
With 282, why can't they just withdraw it? Why this sleight of hand?
The
finance minister first makes a statement that there will be no taxation retrospectively for the future.
If they withdrew it, the Congress would support them?
I don't know. We'll take a call.
First you do it, then you ask them to withdraw it.
They don't need us. They have 282.
You committed here. You're asking them to
I'm not going to commit what I'm going to do or what our party is going to do on it.
The right thing. BJP doesn't need the support. It's the right thing. They should do it.
If it's the right thing, they should do it.
It is the right thing.
All right.
They are not asking us our opinion.
It's surprising that BJP is sort of shy of doing that.
That's right.
And there's no law by
No, the Congress can't say that's right.
The Congress can't say that's right on the question of retrospective tax. It's your
fault.
fault.
Doing it the right way. Why this sleight of hand?
Ravi Shankar Prasad, just wanted to get you to the bottom line.
Possible way the way you guys did it. That heads I win, tails you lose.
One thing I want to tell you on this BD part, it is now proven. It is proven, and my committee, which I chair, Environment and Forest, has held sittings where they said tobacco curing is carcinogenic, and there's tobacco in BD and no tax on BD. Bizarre.
Okay, right. Ravi Shankar Prasad, your final take, Prannoy, perhaps before we wrap up the show. On the bottom line of the budget, and the bottom line of the budget is always the eventual fiscal deficit, and the finance minister stuck his guns and said 3.5, perhaps betting now that the Reserve Bank of India is going to cut interest rates. To your mind, was it the right call to bring it down to 3.5 instead of spending a little bit more money directly on boosting infrastructure, more infrastructure spending or other spending?
Vikram, we are spending 2,21,000 crores on railways, national highway program and the rural roads. Is it a small investment? Forget the Digital India, Skill India and Make in India. Purely on this infrastructure, we are giving the highest allocation ever on the agriculture, 35,000 crore, 85,000 crore irrigation in the coming 5 years, and also this whole the Fasal Bima Yojana and other things. Therefore, what we are doing, try to understand the main thrust of the budget. Because of the international slowdown, we are creating new economy in the rural areas to further boost growth. And let me tell you one silver lining. E-commerce is rising in India at the rate of 67%. And the catchment area is small municipal town and villages. Why I know? I have put my postal department in the delivery of their articles all over the country because of our wide platform. And Vikram, let me tell you, the parcel revenue of postal was dipped by 2% in 13-14, rose by 45% in 14-15, and risen by 120% by January of 15-16. That's the scale we are looking at. Therefore, there is aspiration, there is expectation.
Right, sir.
And if we are able to further reinforce rural infrastructure, new economic growth areas will come about. That's what we are looking at.
Achha, then postponed by 5 years.
Right.
Well, Ashwani, you will always say that. You will keep on saying to 2019, even thereafter.
Your budget says that. Your budget says that. Ravi,
we're on a different channel right now. Just let's keep to the substance, and we come to the end of the show. And since it's all about budget, I'd like to talk about something that's nothing to do with the budget, and congratulate you, Minister, and the TRAI on supporting net neutrality. I think you've set an example, a fine example to the rest of the world. Many congratulations. And NDTV was one of the first to get off internet.org, and we are right behind you. And God bless you for doing that. It's a huge,
and Dr. Roy,
huge thing, huge step to have taken.
Dr. Roy, I'm grateful for the kind words. Just to tell you, I had just gone to Harvard to give a lecture there, and many people met me in New York and Harvard, and they say we are looking towards India to resolve this very complex issue of net neutrality. And they heard me in the parliament, and I tried the recommendations, and I can tell you, India has shown a new path to the entire world.
Right, exactly. Well, thank you all very much indeed. Thank you for going in depth, and yes, you can be IT and a politician. Thank you all very much indeed.
Thank you.